Nuclear. The first thing that pops into most of your minds when you think of nuclear are the classic mushroom cloud picture and an atomic bomb. Now, that's only half the story with nuclear. The other half is power. Nuclear power. Something the United States gets about 19% of its energy from. Now, when you think of nuclear power, a lot of you probably think of large name plants like Chernobyl and Fukushima, and maybe even 3 Mile Island, if a lot of people remember that one. Now, nuclear power does have its drawbacks. Sometimes bad things happen, and most of those times, those bad things have happened when humans have stopped going by their safety regulations and guidelines. In Chernobyl, on my right, the scientists decided to run an experiment on the nuclear reactors that they really had no idea what they were doing with, which in turn caused a massive nuclear meltdown and caused a hydrogen explosion which blew up 2 of the reactors and caused a lot of radiation to escape into the air and surrounding areas. Now, with Fukushima on the left, that one was a little more uncontrollable because of the earthquakes that occurred in Japan and the tsunami subsequently that occurred from the earthquake. Now, these plants were flooded, and then due to the shutdown of power from electricity because of the tsunamis and the earthquakes, the emergency safety systems were shut down and stopped working, causing overheating of the power plants and more nuclear meltdowns in the reactors. Now, the thing about this is that human error is one large part that can be stopped if people follow the regulations and the laws regarding nuclear power plants. And you really can't stop earthquakes and tsunamis from happening, and that was just kind of a freak accident, which, you know, that could happen to lots of things. Now, most nuclear power plants look like this. Not a bad setting, you know, grass on the outside, very clean, very manageable looking, and rising out of those towers is not smoke, that is all water vapor, because they're all water cooled, and you know, when water heats up, it turns into steam, and that escapes to the cooling towers. Now, these look much nicer than these plants. These are coal plants. The one on my right is the actual area where it is burnt and produced for electricity, and the other is the processing plant, where it has to go through processes. Now, for me, I would much rather live near one of these. They look much cleaner, they look much safer. Here, not so much. There's a lot more pollutants coming out of the coal plants than the nuclear power plants. Now, on the same notion, the waste production, and there is a little blue bar there on the right, is very small. Nuclear power produces about 3,000 tons of waste a year in the United States, compared to about 3.7 million tons of, billion tons, 3.7 million tons, of waste a year. Coal plants also, in recent scientific studies, have been shown to produce just as much radiation from their waste products as a properly functioning nuclear power plant. Now, if the nuclear power plant is not being regulated correctly, or the procedures followed correctly, then yes, more radiation could be escaping. But through regulations and hopefully people following the rules, nuclear power plants produce less radiation than most coal plants. Now, on the same notion that coal plants produce so much more waste than nuclear power plants, they also produce less energy comparatively. So the average coal plant and the average nuclear power plant produce different amounts of energy. The average nuclear power plant produces about 11.8 million kilowatt hours a year, compared to the average coal plant, which produces about 3.7 kilowatt hours a year. And with that, you have to take those into consideration. Now, one produces more energy and produces less waste. One produces less energy and more waste. And for that, I believe we should be using more nuclear power than coal power because of the drawbacks from the environment considered with nuclear power, or with coal power compared to nuclear power. Thank you.